Because it is almost 2022, I thought that there is no better time than to do a reading reflection. Now, reading reflections are something that I've always kind of done on my own, which is where I, write down my thoughts about either a certain book or about a period of time when I was reading something. And so I thought it would be cool if I did one of those reading reflections in sort of a video format. And because it is the beginning of a new year, I thought it would be a good idea to maybe do a little reading reflection on all of the reading that I did back in 2021, which is crazy that it's now 2022, because it doesn't feel like 2022 at all. But yeah, here we are. So I see a lot of YouTubers doing reading wrap-ups of 2021, so going through their favorite books of 2021 and all the things that they read. And I was going to do a video like that, but then when I was looking through my list of books that I've read this past year, I really didn't have that many books that I consider like really, really good, or I really didn't have that many new favorites or anything, so I thought it would be kind of a waste of a video to go over my new favorite books that I read in 2021. So instead I opted for this sort of reading reflection where I'm just going to go through some of my favorite books that I read, as well as some of the things that I learned about myself while reading this past year and things like that. So I thought I'd start this off by breaking down my year of reading in 2021. I think at the beginning of 2021 I was really determined to read a lot, and I think that I maybe set some unrealistic expectations for myself, especially when it came to the amount of books I wanted to read. In 2020, that was the year that really got me back into reading. I remember I read something like 80 books that year, and a lot of that was due to the fact that I was in lockdown. So I think it was really unrealistic for me to be like, I'm gonna read 100 books in 2021 and I'm gonna love them all. That was very unrealistic, especially with school starting again and doing lots of things over the summer, like working and whatnot. So I think I've come to the realization of maybe not setting reading goals for myself next year. I think it would be good to be able to read every day and, read before bed and things like that. But I think putting too much pressure on myself to fulfill a goal is maybe a little bit unnecessary. And I think what I've learned this past year is that that's not always the most beneficial thing. So yeah, that was something that came as a bit of a surprise. I thought I was going to be able to hit this 100 book mark so easily, but I think now I realize that was a little bit unattainable. Now, I just talked about how setting goals for yourself isn't always the smartest thing, but I think that there's something to be said for smaller goals over shorter periods of time instead of some big, large, unattainable goal like reading a certain number of books in a year. So I think for myself, I'm going to set a really low goal. I'm going to try and finish 2 books every month. And I think that this is going to be more beneficial than harmful for myself, because I think it'll push me to expand my horizons and be sure that I'm always reading a book that I really want to be reading instead of one that I don't. I think this past year I fell into the trap of a lot of times starting a book, and even though I wasn't super into it, and even though I wasn't really enjoying it, I kept trying to push myself to finish the book. So I know this happened with The Godfather and Dune, and although I do want to finish those books eventually, I think that I was really focused on trying to tell myself that I needed to finish these books. And so I think maybe setting a lower goal for myself is gonna make me want to read books that I want to read a little bit more instead of books that I think I should be reading. So finally, for 2022, I think that something else that might be fun is to also connect with more people who like to read. I think for a long time I was sort of alone in my quest of reading books and finding new books to read, and I think that I've been really lucky and I've been able to make some new friends recently who have also been involved in the reading world and enjoy reading. And so I think reaching out to people and trying to connect a little bit more with people around me will be really beneficial in helping me sort of create a community who love to read. And I think that'll be nice for myself, and I think that'll be good for me to sort of make new friends and meet new people. So the final thing I wanted to do in this video is to run through all of the books that I read in 2021 that I consider new favorites, or like the best books that I read in 2021. So I only have 5 on my list, which is significantly smaller than past years, which is okay, and I've learned to accept, and I'm trying to accept that it's okay that I only had 5 books that I consider really, really good this year. The first book on that list is The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald. Now, this is in no way a new release. This is a classic, and I discovered it this year and really, really enjoyed it. I think this was the classic that sort of got me into my era of wanting to read more classics and wanting to experiment and try new things. And so I think I'm really grateful to this book for that, for giving me that. The first couple of days after I read this, I was like, I really don't see what the hype is about. This wasn't an incredible book by any means. Like, why is this considered a classic? But the more I was able to reflect on it and rethink it, it really made me appreciate what this book is and what it stands for. It's about the American dream, or what we consider as a society to be the American dream. And I think that it was a really interesting lens on that whole ideology. And I really highly recommend this if you're just starting to get into classics. I think it's a good one to sort of ease your way into the pool of so many classics. And it's funny too, because I have a shelf that's like half full of just classics that I haven't read, and it definitely is a little bit daunting, but starting off easy with The Great Gatsby was definitely the way to go. Next book that really made an impact on me this year that I read was The Maidens by Alex Michaelides. I still can't say his last name. I'm so sorry. Anyway, this book was definitely one that at the time of reading it, and I think I even made a video about it, it was like my new favorite book. I was like, I've never read anything better than this book. Blah, 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 blah. Reflecting, it's not that great. It's not like some new era classic. It's not some new modern classic, right? But it was really fun. It was really engaging, and it kept me on my toes the whole time. And I think that there's something to be said for books like that. Even though they might not be the most brilliant book ever written, it held my attention. It made me think it was my favorite book for a long time until I started reading other things. So I think that it definitely gave me a sense of joy and thrill reading it, because it is a thriller. I think it'll definitely stay on my list of favorites just because it's a thriller that I know I really enjoyed, and the setting was great. I love, dark academia, boarding school vibes, college, universities, that kind of stuff. And so yeah, it really opened my eyes to this new genre of thrillers or like mystery novels and things like that. So I'll look forward to reading more books like that in the future. And so I think that I can acknowledge that this book wasn't perfect and it's not an amazing, brilliant book, but it definitely brought me a lot of joy. And so that is why I included it on this list. So the next book on this list is one that I have not talked about yet on this channel, and that is A Court of Silver Flames by Sarah J. Maas. So I am a huge fan of Sarah J. Maas and the ACOTAR series especially, which is the only series that I've finished. And A Court of Silver Flames was, I think, by far my favorite book in the series, and with the exception of A Court of Mist and Fury, just because it's iconic. What do you mean it can't be A Court of Mist and Fury? Anyway, A Court of Silver Flames definitely was a whirlwind. I had an emotional roller coaster reading it, and it definitely was very thrilling at times, but also insanely intense at other times. And I think because of the characters and just how much I loved Nesta and Cassian's relationship, I think that just made my time reading it so enjoyable. And I really applaud Sarah J. Maas for creating such a dynamic between two characters. For a long time I really did not want to read romance or anything related to fantasy romance. I was hardcore, either we get fantasy or we get realistic fiction. There's no other genre that I can read. But this book definitely opened my eyes to this idea of romance fantasy that is still heavily focused on the plot, but also can have a lot of fun elements to it as well, related to romance. And so this book was so fun to read. I read it super quickly, and I know it's a huge book too. But it's funny because I have not yet bought a hard copy of it. I read it on ebook when it came out, and the only reason why I haven't bought a hardcover copy of it yet is because I'm waiting for the paperback to come out so it can match the rest of the series that I own. But yes, so this one was such a fun time. I love Sarah J. Maas's books, and so whenever she has a new release, it's probably going to be on my favorites list of that year, just because I enjoy her books and her writing so much. Anyway, the next book on this list is My Body by Emily Ratajkowski. There's so much I could say about this book. I think I could honestly make a separate video just reviewing this book, and I think I might, honestly, because because there's so much I could say about this book and so much that I want to have a discussion about. And I think it's a little bit daunting too, because this book definitely deals with some topics that are really heavy and really controversial, and so I don't know if I fully trust myself just to sit and talk at a camera saying, this is what I got from this book and this is what you should get from this book. So I'm thinking maybe I should have a conversation with someone who else someone else who's also read this book, and maybe that would be more beneficial. I don't know. Or maybe I'll just do my review on it. But this book made it to my list of favorites because it truly is that. It is a favorite of mine now. I think this is such a personal book, and for the author to be able to share it and put out her, very personal stories into this world for the purpose of people to critique it is just so amazing and so admirable. Really quick, I just wanted to say that this is by no means a perfect book, and there's definitely some issues with it, and I think one of the reasons why I enjoyed it so much and it's on this list is because I am grateful for the conversations that it has sparked, and I think it's really amazing when a book can do that, when a book can start these conversations, especially between women, and about societal norms and things like that. So if you're interested for a review, let me know. The final book on this list that I think has become my new favorite book of all time is The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. If you are surprised that this book is on this list, don't be. From the second that I finished this book, I knew it was going to be a new favorite. I just absolutely adore Madeline Miller's writing and the way that she told this story. For me, Greek mythology has always been really near and dear to my heart. I was in Greek mythology club in grade school. Like, I just love anything to do with Greek mythology, and I think this book was really amazing in the sense that it told a story over a long period of time, and it kept you engaged in it the entire time. There's so much content in this book, but yet it was created in a way that it's really easy for the reader to digest. And there's so much I could say about this book, but the main thing is that Madeline Miller told this story beautifully. There were so many little descriptions and lines in here that are just absolutely beautiful. I need to reread it and then tab all of my favorite lines because there's so many. And I think that the way that she writes her characters and the way that she writes her narration of her books is really, really incredible. So I highly recommend this if you're looking for a heart-wrenching love story. If you're really into Greek mythology, this is the book for you. I hope you enjoyed this little reading reflection / wrap up of 2021. Anyway, I hope to see you guys in 2022, and thank you so much for watching.